North Dakota is a land of deceptive simplicity. To the casual observer, it is a grid of section lines, a sea of sunflowers, and a sky so vast it feels as though the atmosphere has been stripped away, leaving you exposed to the raw vacuum of space. But for those who venture beyond the bright lights of Fargo or Bismarck, the landscape begins to change. It doesn't become mountainous or lush, it becomes subtractive. There is a specific kind of off energy in rural North Dakota. There is a heavy, pressurized stillness that suggests the land is not merely empty, but is actively waiting for the human element to finish its brief, noisy tenure. Some of these towns didn't just decline. They were hollowed out by the wind in the winter until only a psychic shell remained. From the nuclear silos hidden beneath the wheat to the sod house ruins of the pioneers, these tin towns possess an atmosphere that feels too quiet to be normal. It is a sensation of being washed by a horizon that never ends, in a place where the wind carries the static of 1,000 failed homesteads. 1. Tagus, the ghost in the Coulee. Tagus was once a stop on the Great Northern Railway, but today it is a collection of foundations and a reputation that borders on the legendary. Located in Mountrail County, the off feeling in Tagus is rooted in a localized sense of dread that centers on the site of an old, vanished church. The legend of Tagus involves a satanic underground, but the atmospheric reality is far more subtle and unnerving. Visitors report a thinness to the air, as if the physical laws of the state don't quite apply here. The wind, which usually howls across the surrounding hills, often drops to a dead, vacuum-like calm within the town's original footprint. There is a persistent report of phantom trains, the sound of a heavy locomotive chugging through the valley where no tracks have seen a train in decades. Walking through Tagus feels like walking through a room where someone is hiding just behind a curtain. The landscape is open and empty, yet you feel an overwhelming urge to check over your shoulder. The local geography, a series of rolling, treeless coulees, creates a natural amphitheater for these auditory hallucinations. Sounds from miles away carry with a crystalline clarity, making it impossible to tell if a noise is right behind you or 3 counties over. This spatial confusion leads to a haunted sensation that stays with you long after you leave the gravel roads. Tagus isn't just a ghost town. It is a place where the dirt seems to have a memory of something violent, a location where the silence isn't peaceful, it's expectant. It feels like a town that was erased not by time, but by a collective, desperate agreement to forget it ever existed. 2. Nekoma, the concrete pyramid. Nekoma is home to the Stanley R. Mickelson Safeguard Complex, a massive, windowless concrete pyramid that rises out of the flat farmland like a monument to an alien civilization. Built during the Cold War to track incoming Soviet missiles, it was operational for less than a year before being decommissioned. The off vibe in Nekoma is one of technological haunting. The pyramid is a geometric anomaly in a landscape of organic curves and straight section lines. Its scale is so massive that it distorts your sense of distance. You think you are almost there, only to drive for another 10 minutes as the gray monolith looms larger and larger. The town of Nekoma itself feels like a suburb of a ghost, a community that was built to serve a machine that died decades ago. There is a hum in the air near the site, a low-frequency vibration that many attribute to the massive underground bunkers and tunnels that still honeycomb the earth beneath the pyramid. Standing in the shadow of this concrete giant, the silence feels industrial. It is the silence of a computer that has been turned off but is still warm to the touch. The town feels observed by the pyramid's blind, sloping faces. Residents are sparse, and the atmosphere is one of rigid, mid-century anxiety. It is the most wrong-feeling location in the state because it represents the moment human ingenuity peaked in its ability to destroy the world, and then simply walked away, leaving the heavy, gray evidence to rot in the wheat fields. Nekoma is a town that lives in a permanent duck and cover drill that Marmoth, the dinosaur's breath, sits in the far southwest corner of the state, tucked into the rugged Badlands near the Little Missouri River. It was once a major railroad town, but today it feels like a place where time has stopped moving forward and has begun to move backward. The off energy in Marmoth is primeval. The town is surrounded by some of the richest dinosaur fossil beds in the world, and there is a sense that the ancient, prehistoric world is closer to the surface here than anywhere else. The architecture is a mix of grand, decaying brick structures and sun-bleached wood that looks like it has been scoured by sand for a century. The air in Marmoth feels heavy, as if it is saturated with the dust of creatures that died millions of years ago. Locals are friendly but possess a weathered quality, their faces reflecting the harsh, beautiful landscape they inhabit. At night, the badlands surrounding the town take on a skeletal appearance. The shadows in the buttes look like moving figures, and the sound of the river is a constant, low growl. There is a feeling of temporal displacement in Marmoth. You get the sense that if you walked far enough into the hills, you might stumble out of the 21st century entirely. The town feels like a frontier outpost that was forgotten by the rest of the world, left to be slowly absorbed by the prehistoric silt and the relentless wind. It is a place of deep, stony silence and a watchful quality that suggests the land is reclaiming its own, one brick at a time. 4. Sanish, the Sunken identity. Sanish is a town that was moved, literally. The original town site was flooded by the creation of Lake Sakakawea in the 1950s, and the new Sanish was built on higher ground. However, the energy of the town seems to have stayed underwater. The wrong feeling in Sanish is a sense of liquid grief. The town feels like a person living with a phantom limb. When the water levels of the reservoir drop, the foundations and streets of the old Sanish emerge from the mud like a skeleton being exhumed. This creates a psychological instability for the community. The town is literally split between the living world and the sunken one. Walking along the shore of the lake, you can find rusted remnants of a life that was forcibly drowned, a horseshoe, a piece of a stove, a child's marble. The air feels damp and stagnant, even in the middle of a prairie summer. The energy in Sanish is one of profound rejection. The government flooded the land, the water claimed the memories, and the new town feels like a temporary camp rather than a permanent home. There is a persistent echo in the area, a feeling that the conversations and prayers of the original residents are still trapped in the silt at the bottom of the lake. It is a town that shouldn't exist, or rather, a town that exists in two places at once, and that duality creates a vibrational offness that makes visitors feel like they are trespassing on a funeral that has lasted for 70 years. 5. Alkabo, the edge of the void. Located in the extreme northwest corner of the state, just miles from the Canadian and Montana borders, Alkabo is the definition of the end of the road. The town is almost entirely gone, save for a few skeletal buildings and a massive, haunting schoolhouse. The off-vibe in Alkabo is geographic vertigo. The horizon here is so flat and unobstructed that you can see the curvature of the earth. This lack of visual anchors creates a crushing sense of isolation. You feel as though you are standing on a pedestal in the middle of a void. The wind at Alkabo doesn't just blow, it screams, a high-pitched whistle that sounds like a human voice calling from a great distance. The abandoned schoolhouse, with its empty windows staring out at the empty plains, acts as a lighthouse for a sea that dried up a century ago. Standing in Alkabo, you feel remarkably small and incredibly vulnerable. There is a watchful quality to the landscape, a sense that the environment is tallying your breaths. It is the kind of place where you feel like you are being monitored from miles away by things that have no eyes. The silence in between the gusts of wind is absolute and unnatural, a dead zone, where even the insects seem to stop moving. Alkabo isn't just remote, it is exposed. It is a place where the sky is too big and the ground is too steady, leaving the visitor feeling like an ant on a glass table, waiting for a giant hand to sweep them off the edge. 6. Wheelock, the dying pulse. Wheelock was once a vibrant community on the edge of the Bakken Oil Formation, but today it is a ghost town that refuses to fully disappear. It is a collection of sagging porches and rusted machinery that feels too quiet, despite the industrial activity nearby. The wrong feeling in Wheelock is the clash of eras. Just a few miles away, the oil patch is a hive of lights, trucks, and noise, but within the limits of Wheelock, time seems to have coagulated. The air has a metallic, oily smell that clashes with the organic scent of the prairie grass. The town feels like it is being eaten by the industry surrounding it. You'll see a modern, high-tech oil rig on the horizon, framed by the rotting window of a 1920s farmhouse. This creates a psychological dissonance. Your brain can't decide if the area is thriving or dying. The silence in Wheelock is punctuated by the rhythmic thumping of distant pump jacks, a sound that locals call the heart of the prairie. But it sounds more like a labored, mechanical breathing. The town feels hollowed out, not just by the loss of people, but by the extraction of the resources beneath it. There is a feeling of biological rejection here. The land feels poisoned in a spiritual sense as well as an industrial one. It is a cautionary tale written in rust and oil, a place where the earth has been turned into a commodity and the human element has been discarded. 7. Reeder, the High Plains Purgatory. Reeder is a small town in Adams County that remains inhabited, but it possesses a stuffy energy that feels like a room that hasn't been aired out in decades. The streets are wide and empty, and the houses are maintained with a precision that feels almost military. The awe factor in Reeder is perfection syndrome. There is no litter. There are no overgrown lawns. There is almost no visible movement. It feels like a town from a 1950s civil defense film, a community that is perfectly prepared for an event that will never happen. When you drive through, you get the distinct impression that you are being watched from every window, but not a single curtain moves. The wrongness here is the lack of friction. Life is messy, but Reeder is sterile. This creates an uncanny valley effect for the entire community, a sense that if you peeled back the siding on any house, you'd find wires and clockwork instead of people. Locals are polite but possess a guarded quality, as if they are protecting a secret that the rest of the world has forgotten. There is a feeling that the town is holding its breath, waiting for a signal or a bell to toll. The wind through the town doesn't sound like wind. It sounds like a collective whisper. Reeder feels like a town that has successfully seceded from the chaos of the modern world, but at the cost of its own soul. It is a beautiful, tidy place, but it is the beauty of a taxidermied animal, vibrant, but fundamentally dead. 8. Sims, the Scandinavian Shadow. Sims was once a coal mining town and the site of the first Lutheran church in Dakota Territory. Today, it is a tiny cluster of buildings in a beautiful, rolling valley. But the beauty is deceptive. Sims feels like a place that has been marked by its past. The vibe in Sims is ancestral. The town is dominated by the Opletalin Lutheran Church, a white wooden structure that sits on a hill overlooking the valley. The church feels heavy, as if it is anchoring the spirits of the Norwegian settlers who built it. Visitors often report a feeling of temporal displacement, as if they have stepped back into the 1880s. The silence in Sims is thick, a pressurized quiet that makes you feel as though you should be whispering. There is a legend about the White Lady of Sims, but the atmospheric reality is a more pervasive sense of being judged by the history of the place. The geography of the valley creates a pocket of time. When you drive into Sims, the modern world, the radio stations, the cell signal, the feeling of the present seems to fade away. The air feels older here, carrying the scent of coal smoke and damp earth. It is a town that feels like it is perpetually Sunday morning in 1885. The residents are deeply private, and the atmosphere is one of rigid, quiet piety. To visit Sims is to feel like an intruder in a long-standing conversation between the living and the dead, a place where the past isn't behind you. It's standing right behind you, watching you walk by. 9. Balfour, the Rusted Grid. Balfour was once a major railroad hub, but today it is a town of partialities, half ruined, half restored. Located in McHenry County, the feeling here is a result of the town's architectural decay and its erratic layout. The wrong feeling in Balfour is structural vertigo. You'll see a beautifully maintained home sitting directly next to a collapsed brick building that has been reclaimed by trees. This creates a psychological dissonance. Your brain can't decide if the town is growing or dying. The grid of the town is perfectly straight, but the buildings are sagging, giving the impression that the earth is slowly trying to fold the town back into itself. There is a persistent sound of clinking in the wind, the sound of rusted metal hitting rusted metal. That creates a soundtrack of industrial decline. The people of Balfour are resilient, but there is a watchful quality to the town. It feels like a place where everyone knows exactly where you are at all times. The air in Balfour feels dusty, as if the very atoms of the town are breaking down into grit. There is a feeling of abandoned ambition here. You can see where the town was supposed to grow, where the grand streets were supposed to be, and the subsequent silence feels like a physical barrier. Balfour is a town that is trying to be two things at once, and that tension creates a vibrational offness that stays with you long after you leave. 10. Medora, the theatrical trap. Medora is North Dakota's premier tourist destination, a Western-themed town located at the entrance to Theodore Roosevelt National Park. But for those who stay after the tourists leave, the town takes on a very different, very off energy. The off feeling in Medora is the mask of kitsch. Seeing a fiberglass statue of a cowboy while a storm begins to kick up over the jagged Badlands creates a surreal, nightmarish atmosphere. The town feels like it is clinging to a fictional story to avoid looking at the brutal landscape surrounding it. During the day, it is a place of musicals and ice cream shops. At night, when the lights of the Medora musical go dark, the town feels like a stage set after the actors have left. The wrongness here is the intersection of childhood fantasy and harsh reality. The air in Medora is always gritty, and the smell of the nearby river and the burning coal veins in the park create a heavy, organic funk that clashes with the bright colors of the attractions. It is a town of masks, where the Old West is a performance that hides a deeper, more territorial spirit. There is a feeling that the real Medora is something much older and much darker than the gift shops suggest. It is a town that is holding its breath, waiting for the tourists to leave so it can finally stop smiling and return to its natural state of rugged, unyielding silence. The horizon's unblinking eye. The off energy of these North Dakota towns isn't just about ghosts or abandoned buildings. It's about the sheer resilience of human impact on a landscape that is fundamentally indifferent to it. In the high plains, nothing truly disappears. It just bleaches and becomes brittle. Whether it is the concrete ghost of Nekoma or the sunken memory of Sanish, these towns serve as reminders that North Dakota is a state built on the leftovers of grand dreams. When you drive through these outposts, you aren't just a tourist. You are a witness to a long-running argument between humanity and the void. This something left behind is often just the silence that followed the screaming, a quiet anxiety that tells you that in North Dakota, the horizon is always watching, and it has a very long memory. Beyond the abandoned storefronts and the rusted machinery lies the true source of North Dakota's off energy, the realization that the landscape is not actually empty, but merely indifferent. In the American West, there is a myth of the frontier as a place to be conquered, but in these 10 towns, the land has clearly won. The psychological toll of living in a place where you can see the weather arriving 2 hours before it hits, or where the nearest neighbor is a pinprick of light on a 10-mile horizon, creates a specific type of prairie madness. It is a quiet, internal retreat that mirrors the physical retreat of the settlements themselves. This offness is further amplified by the state's dual identity as a pastoral paradise and a global nuclear graveyard. Hidden beneath the golden waves of grain are the launch facilities that once held the power to end civilization. This subterranean tension vibrates through the soil of towns like Nekoma and Tagus, creating a cognitive dissonance that is hard to shake. You are standing in a place of profound, natural beauty, yet you are also standing on a hair trigger of man-made annihilation. The silence of the North Dakota plains is a mirror. It reflects back whatever internal noise you brought with you. If you come seeking peace, the vastness can feel like a sanctuary. But if you come with an unsettled mind, the big quiet becomes a predatory thing, a weight that presses against your eardrums until you find yourself speaking aloud just to prove you still exist. These towns are the anchors for that silence. They are the places where the human story tried to take root and found the soil too cold, the wind too fast, and the horizon too wide. They remain as warnings, hollowed-out monuments to the fact that out here, the land doesn't just endure, it waits.